The Awakening. Vision Marcus Reed pressed his palm against the cold glass of the office building's 42nd floor, watching the city lights blur through his exhausted eyes. Another sleepless night stretched ahead of him, patrolling empty corridors, while the rest of the world dreamed. At 28, he'd grown accustomed to the solitude that came with his security job. But lately, the boundary between his waking hours and sleep had begun to dissolve in ways that left him questioning his sanity. The dreams had started 3 weeks ago, always the same yet somehow different each time. He would find himself standing in a vast chamber made entirely of what appeared to be living crystal, its walls pulsing with soft, iridescent light. The air itself seemed to hum with energy, and floating platforms drifted lazily through the space, like lily pads on an impossible pond. At the center of it all sat a throne that defied description, seemingly carved from a single massive gemstone that shifted colors with each heartbeat. And there she would be. Queen Velthara possessed a beauty that transcended human understanding. Her skin held the luminescence of moonlight on water, and her hair flowed like liquid starlight down her shoulders. When she spoke, her voice carried the resonance of distant music, each word carefully chosen and weighted with ancient wisdom. Most striking were her eyes, deep pools of silver that seemed to hold the reflected light of 1,000 stars. "You returned to me again, Marcus Reed," she had said during last night's dream, rising gracefully from her crystalline throne. "Night after night, you seek something you cannot name." In the dream, Marcus had felt bold, unafraid, in a way that completely contradicted his waking personality. "Maybe I'm just looking for something real," he had replied, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Velthara had smiled then, an expression both sad and knowing. "Reality is more fluid than your kind believes. Tell me, what would you wish for if you knew your desires could reshape the very fabric of existence?" The question had jolted him awake at his security desk, heart pounding and palm pressed against his chest where a strange warmth lingered. But this time was different. This time, he wasn't alone. "Marcus? Marcus, wake up!" Jenny Walsh's voice cut through his grogginess as she shook his shoulder. His co-worker stood over him, her usually cheerful face creased with concern. "You were talking in your sleep again, but this time you were glowing." "Glowing?" Marcus sat up straighter, rubbing his eyes. "What do you mean, glowing?" Jenny stepped back, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. "I mean literally glowing, like there was light coming from inside you, and you were speaking in some kind of language I've never heard before. It sounded almost musical." Marcus felt his blood run cold. In his dream, Velthara had been teaching him phrases in her native tongue, explaining that understanding would come naturally to those she chose to communicate with. He glanced down at his hands, half expecting to see some residual luminescence, but they appeared perfectly normal under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Jenny, I need you to listen to me very carefully," he said, standing up and facing her fully. "Have you ever had dreams so vivid they felt more real than being awake?" She frowned, studying his face with the analytical expression she typically reserved for crossword puzzles. Jenny had been working security for 5 years longer than Marcus, and in that time, she'd developed an almost supernatural ability to read people. "Everyone has vivid dreams sometimes, Marcus. But you've been acting strange lately. Maybe you should talk to someone professional about this." "I already am." Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling to Dr. Nathaniel Brooks's contact information. "I have an appointment this afternoon, but Jenny, what if I told you I don't think these are just dreams?" Before she could respond, Marcus's phone began vibrating, with an incoming call. The display showed an unknown number, but somehow he knew he needed to answer it. The voice that emerged from the speaker was unmistakably melodic, carrying that same otherworldly resonance he'd come to associate with his dreams. "Marcus Reed," the voice said, and Jenny's eyes widened as she heard it too. The time has come for you to choose. 3 wishes I offer, as promised in the realm of dreams. But know this, what you wish for in one world will manifest in all worlds. Jenny grabbed his arm, her grip tight enough to leave marks. Marcus, who is that? How do they know your name? The voice continued, patient and eternal. Your first wish, dreamer. Speak it now, and watch as the boundaries between sleeping and waking dissolve. Marcus felt the weight of possibility settling on his shoulders like a physical thing. Everything rational in his mind screamed that this was impossible, that he was having some kind of breakdown. But the warmth spreading through his chest, the same sensation he'd felt in every dream, convinced him otherwise. I wish, he said slowly, his voice gaining strength with each word. I wish to be able to help people in ways I never could before. To have the power to make a real difference in their lives. The phone went silent, but the air around Marcus began to shimmer with the same crystalline quality he recognized from Velthara's realm. Jenny stumbled backward, her mouth falling open as she watched Marcus's ordinary security uniform transform into something that looked almost regal, still practical, but somehow more significant, more purposeful. What's happening to you? She whispered. Before Marcus could answer, the building's intercom system crackled to life. Security to the 15th floor immediately. We have a situation with a potential jumper on the exterior ledge. Marcus felt something surge within him, a confidence and clarity he'd never experienced while awake. Without hesitation, he strode toward the elevator, Jenny close behind him. As they rode up, she kept staring at him with a mixture of fear and fascination. Marcus, you need to explain what's happening. That voice on the phone. The way you're acting. The way you look different somehow. I'm not sure I can explain it, he said, surprising himself with how calm he sounded. But I think I'm about to understand it better. The elevator doors opened, to reveal chaos. Police officers and paramedics crowded the hallway while through the windows Marcus could see a figure perched precariously on the building's ledge. The wind whipped around the person, a young man who couldn't have been more than 20, tears streaming down his face as he contemplated the drop below. Detective Rodriguez, whom Marcus recognized from previous incidents, approached them grimly. The kid's been out there for 20 minutes, says he's lost everything, has nothing left to live for. Our negotiator is on the way, but let me talk to him, Marcus said, the words coming out with such authority that everyone turned to look at him. Even he was surprised by the command in his voice. Marcus, you're not trained for this, Rodriguez protested, but something in Marcus's expression made him pause. Trust me, Marcus said, and somehow, inexplicably, Rodriguez nodded. As Marcus approached the window, he felt that strange warmth spreading through his body again. When he began to speak to the young man on the ledge, his voice carried a quality he'd never possessed before. Compassion that felt almost tangible. Understanding that transcended normal human connection. I know you can't see any way forward, Marcus called out, his words somehow carrying clearly despite the wind. But what if I told you that sometimes the most impossible things turn out to be the most real? The young man turned toward him, and Marcus saw something shift in his eyes, a flicker of hope where none had existed before. Over the next 30 minutes, Marcus found himself saying exactly the right things, understanding precisely what the young man needed to hear, offering comfort and wisdom that seemed to flow from some deeper source within himself. When the young man finally climbed back through the window, alive and choosing to seek help, everyone stared at Marcus with newfound respect. Jenny approached him slowly, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. That wasn't normal, Marcus, she said quietly. The way you talked to him, the way he responded, it was like you knew exactly what he needed to hear. Marcus nodded, understanding dawning on him. His first wish had been granted, but the implications were only beginning to reveal themselves. As they rode the elevator back down, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. 2 wishes remain, dreamer. Choose wisely, for each choice will bring you closer to a truth you may not be prepared to face. That afternoon, Marcus sat in Dr. Brooks's office, trying to explain the unexplainable. The psychiatrist, a distinguished man in his 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, listened patiently as Marcus recounted the morning's events. "Marcus, what you're describing sounds like a significant breakthrough in confidence and intuition," Dr. Brooks said carefully. "Sometimes when we're ready to change, our subconscious finds ways to manifest that readiness. The dreams could be your mind's way of processing a desire for greater purpose in your life." "But what about Jenny seeing me glow? What about the voice on the phone?" Dr. Brooks leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Shared hallucinations aren't uncommon in high-stress environments. And as for the phone call, there are any number of explanations. Perhaps someone was playing a prank or—" "Dr. Brooks," Marcus interrupted, "what if I could prove to you that this is real?" Before the psychiatrist could respond, the office lights began to dim and the air filled with the same crystalline shimmer Marcus had experienced that morning. Both men watched in stunned silence as a figure began to materialize in the empty chair beside Marcus. Queen Velthara appeared not as she did in dreams, but with a presence that was undeniably real, undeniably there. Her silver eyes met Dr. Brooks's, and when she spoke, her voice filled the room with harmonics that seemed to resonate in their very bones. "Greetings, healer of minds," she said with a slight bow of her head. "Your patient speaks truth. The realm of dreams and the realm of waking are not as separate as your kind believes. Marcus Reed has become a bridge between worlds, and his journey has only just begun." Dr. Brooks sat frozen, his rational mind struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. Velthara turned her attention to Marcus, her expression both proud and concerned. "You used your first wish well, dreamer, but know that each wish brings greater responsibility and greater danger. Forces in both our realms have taken notice of what you've become." As quickly as she had appeared, Velthara began to fade, but her final words lingered in the air like an echo. "Be ready, Marcus Reed. Your next choice will determine whether you save both our worlds or doom them to chaos." The office returned to normal lighting, leaving Marcus and Dr. Brooks staring at each other in the heavy silence that followed. Finally, the psychiatrist spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think, Marcus, we're going to need to completely reevaluate your treatment plan." Marcus nodded, understanding that his life had fundamentally changed. The dreams were real, the wishes were real, and whatever came next would test everything he thought he knew about reality itself. As he left Dr. Brooks's office, his phone buzzed again with another message. "The second wish approaches, dreamer. Choose with wisdom, for the consequences grow ever more profound." Standing on the busy street outside, Marcus looked up at the blue sky and wondered what other impossible things were about to become possible. The boundary between dreams and reality had shattered completely, and he was about to discover that some bridges once built could never be uncrossed. The price of dreams. Made real 3 days had passed since Queen Velthara's appearance in Dr. Brooks's office, and Marcus Reed found himself living in a world that no longer followed the rules he'd grown up understanding. His newfound ability to help people had manifested in ways both wonderful and terrifying. Every person he encountered seemed to open up to him instantly, sharing their deepest fears and struggles as if he were some kind of supernatural confessor. The local news had picked up on what they were calling the miracle security guard. After Marcus had talked down 2 more potential suicides and somehow convinced an armed robber to surrender peacefully just by speaking to him for 5 minutes. But with each success, Marcus felt a growing weight on his shoulders, as if the universe itself was pressing down on him with expectations he wasn't sure he could meet. Dr. Brooks had insisted on daily sessions, though their conversations now bore little resemblance to traditional therapy. The psychiatrist had become more of a research partner, documenting every manifestation of Marcus's abilities while struggling to maintain his scientific worldview in the face of increasingly impossible evidence. The electromagnetic readings in my office are still elevated from 3 days ago, Dr. Brooks said, reviewing data on his tablet as Marcus settled into the familiar chair. And several of my other patients have reported unusually vivid dreams. Since then, it's as if your Queen Velthara left some kind of residual energy behind. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar pressure that had become constant since his first wish. I've been having different dreams now, not just Velthara's realm, but glimpses of other places, other beings, and they're all watching me, waiting for something. Before Dr. Brooks could respond, his office door burst open without a knock. The woman who entered moved with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to having her presence command immediate attention. She was tall and elegant, with short-cropped black hair and intense dark eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of the room in seconds. "Dr. Brooks, I presume," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Dr. Rebecca Chen, quantum physicist at the Institute for Advanced Reality Studies. I've been monitoring unusual energy signatures across the city, and they all lead back to your patient." Marcus stood up, immediately on guard. "Who are you, and how did you find us?" Rebecca turned her attention to him, and Marcus felt something shift in the air around them, not the warm, crystalline shimmer he associated with Velthara's influence, but something sharper, more analytical. Marcus Reed, the man who's been bending the laws of physics without a license. "I'm here because what you've done has attracted attention from parties far more dangerous than a concerned physicist." As if summoned by her words, the office lights flickered, and the temperature dropped noticeably. But this wasn't Velthara's gentle manifestation. The air grew thick and oppressive, filled with shadows that seemed to move independently of any light source. A voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere at once, deep and resonant with barely contained malice. "The bridge builder reveals himself, at last." Rebecca immediately pulled out a device that looked like a sophisticated tablet crossed with a Geiger counter. Its screen lit up with readings that made her face pale. "Energy levels are off the charts. This isn't from your queen, Marcus. This is something else entirely." The shadows began to coalesce into forms, tall, angular beings that seemed to be made of liquid darkness. Their eyes glowed with cold blue light, and when they moved, reality itself seemed to ripple around them like disturbed water. "We are the Shadow Collective," the lead figure announced, its voice carrying the weight of cosmic authority. "For eons, we have maintained the barriers between realms, preventing the chaos that comes when realities bleed into one another. You, Marcus Reed, have violated the fundamental laws of existence." Marcus felt fear course through him, but also a strange sense of responsibility. "I didn't know. Queen Velthara never told me." "Velthara is young and foolish," another shadow, being interrupted. "She sees only beauty in connection, not the destruction it brings. Your wishes have created fissures in the fabric of reality itself. Already, creatures from a dozen different dimensions are trying to pour through." Dr. Brooks, who had been watching in stunned silence, finally found his voice. "What do you want from him?" The lead shadow being turned its attention to the psychiatrist, and Dr. Brooks shuddered as those cold blue eyes fixed on him. "We want him to undo what he has done, to use his remaining wishes to seal the rifts and return to his proper place in a single reality." "And if I refuse?" Marcus asked, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. "Then we will take more direct action," the being replied. "The barriers between worlds will be restored, but the process will likely destroy both your realm and Velthara's. In the process, Rebecca stepped forward, her device beeping frantically. There might be another way. Marcus, your connection to the dream realm isn't just magical, it's quantum. You've somehow created a stable bridge between parallel dimensions. If we could understand how... Her words were cut off as the room exploded into chaos. The air filled with crystalline light as Queen Velthara materialized, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a figure that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. A tall, imposing being with silver skin and eyes like molten gold, wearing armor that seemed to be forged from starlight itself. Commander Thane, Velthara said by way of introduction, her voice tense with barely controlled emotion. My military advisor believes you represent a threat to our realm's stability. Thane stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of a sword that hummed with energy. The Shadow Collective speaks truth, though their methods are crude. This human has opened pathways that should remain closed. But rather than destroy him, I propose we contain the damage. The shadow beings turned their attention to the newcomers, and Marcus suddenly found himself at the center of a standoff between cosmic forces beyond his comprehension. The air crackled with conflicting energies as representatives of three different realities faced each other in Dr. Brooks's small office. Enough, Marcus said, and to his amazement, everyone turned to look at him. The authority in his voice surprised even him. It was as if his first wish had given him not just the power to help individuals, but to command attention from beings of immense power. I made this mess, he continued, feeling the weight of 3 sets of otherworldly eyes upon him. I should be the one to fix it. Queen Velthara, you offered me 3 wishes. I've used one. What if I used my second wish to find a solution that protects all our realms? Velthara's expression softened with something that might have been pride. The choice is yours, dreamer, but choose wisely. The Shadow Collective is correct that the rifts grow wider with each passing moment. Rebecca raised her hand like a student seeking permission to speak. Before you make any wishes, you should know what my instruments are detecting. The energy patterns suggest that you're not just bridging dimensions, you're creating a new type of reality altogether, one where the normal rules don't apply. Commander Thane's golden eyes narrowed. Explain, scientist. Think of reality like a river, Rebecca said, warming to her subject despite the surreal circumstances. Most people live in the main current following the flow of normal physics and causality, but Marcus has somehow created an eddy, a place where multiple currents meet and swirl together. It's not chaos exactly, but it's not stable either. The lead shadow being made a sound that might have been contemplation. You suggest that the human has not broken reality, but evolved it? That's exactly what I'm suggesting. The question is, can we guide that evolution, or will it spiral out of control? Marcus felt the familiar warmth building in his chest, the sensation that had accompanied both his successful interventions and his magical transformations. But this time, it felt different, more controlled, more purposeful. I think I understand now, he said slowly. My first wish gave me the power to help people by connecting with them on a deeper level. But that connection didn't just work in our world. It worked across dimensions. I've been creating bridges without realizing it. Velthara nodded, her silver eyes bright with understanding. And each bridge makes you stronger, more capable of creating connections. You are becoming something new, Marcus Reed. The question is, what will you become? The shadow being's voice carried a note of urgency. The rifts are widening. Choose quickly, bridge builder, before the choice is taken from you. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of multiple realities pressing down on him. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond the physical. For my second wish, he said, looking directly at Velthara. I wish for the wisdom to understand how to use these connections responsibly, not to close them, but to manage them. to become a true guardian of the spaces between worlds. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Marcus felt his consciousness expand, touching the edges of realities he couldn't have imagined moments before. He saw the Shadow Collective's realm, a place of ordered darkness where cosmic laws were maintained with rigid precision. He felt Velthara's crystalline dimension, alive with possibility and beauty, but lacking the structure needed for stability. And he sensed dozens of other realms, each with their own rules and inhabitants, all connected now by the bridges his wishes had created. But more than seeing these places, he understood them. He could feel the stress points where realities intersected, the places where careful adjustment could turn chaos into harmony. The knowledge flowed into him like water into a dry riverbed, bringing with it both incredible power and crushing responsibility. When the expansion of his awareness finally stabilized, Marcus found himself changed once again. This time, the transformation was subtle but profound. His eyes now held flecks of both silver and gold, reflecting his connection to multiple realms. When he moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around him, accommodating his presence rather than containing it. "Remarkable," Rebecca breathed, her instruments registering readings that defied explanation. "Your quantum signature has stabilized across multiple dimensional frequencies. You're existing in several realities simultaneously." Commander Thane lowered his hand from his sword, his golden eyes reflecting something that might have been respect. "I sense no chaos in you now, Bridge Builder. You have become what you needed to become." Even the shadow beings seemed less hostile, their forms becoming more defined and less threatening. "The rifts no longer expand," their leader acknowledged, "but neither do they close. You have created something unprecedented, stable pathways between realms that can be opened and closed at will." Velthara approached Marcus, her expression radiant with joy and something deeper, a connection that transcended the physical and touched the very essence of what they both were becoming. "You have exceeded even my hopes, dreamer. But your journey is not complete. One wish remains." Marcus nodded, feeling the truth of her words in every fiber of his expanded being. Around them, the office had become something more than a simple room. It was now a nexus point, a place where multiple realities intersected in perfect harmony. Dr. Brooks sat in his chair, no longer shocked by the impossible but filled with wonder at the new understanding of existence that Marcus's transformation had brought. "The third wish," Marcus said, his voice carrying across dimensions, "will have to wait. I need to learn how to be what I've become before I risk changing anything else." As the representatives of different realms began to fade back to their respective dimensions, each carried with them the knowledge that reality itself had evolved. The bridges between worlds would remain, carefully maintained by their new guardian, opening pathways for connection and understanding, while preventing the chaos that uncontrolled mixing of realities could bring. Rebecca packed up her instruments, shaking her head in amazement. "I'm going to need to rewrite several fundamental laws of physics," she said. "But I think that's going to be the least of the changes coming to our world." Dr. Brooks looked at Marcus, seeing not just his patient, but something far more significant. "So what happens now?" Marcus smiled, and for the first time since his dreams began, it was a smile of complete certainty. "Now I learn how to be the bridge between worlds that was always meant to exist. And when I'm ready, when I truly understand what my final wish should be, I'll use it to ensure that these connections serve to unite rather than divide." As they left the office together, stepping out into a world that would never be quite the same, Marcus felt the presence of Queen Velthara in his mind, not as a dream, but as a partner in the grand work they had begun. Somewhere in the space, between realities, the Shadow Collective maintained their eternal vigil, now assisted rather than opposed by the bridge builder they had once sought to stop. The third wish waited, patient and full of potential, for the moment when Marcus Reed would be ready to reshape existence itself in ways that honored both connection and stability, dreams and reality, the magical and the mundane. And in that waiting lay the promise of possibilities beyond imagination, guided by wisdom earned through the price of dreams made real.